Hello and welcome to the Satluj Podcast. Now, every constitution tells two stories, the one it became and the one it could have been. India's 1950 constitution is usually seen as a triumph. Apparently, it abolished untouchability, gave Dalits reserved seats in every legislature, but less well known, its main Dalit architect saw that outcome as a defeat. Months before independence, Dr Ambedkar wrote his own draft constitution, States and Minorities. It proposed a true federation, separate electorates so minorities chose their own leaders, it guaranteed minority seats in government, and even separate settlements to free Dalits from dependence on dominant caste villages. And the compromise that replaced this, the Pune Pact, with reserved seats inside joint elections, Ambedkar himself called fraught with mischief, a way of stripping minorities of real power. Yet today, that same compromise is what Dalit communities in India defend the hardest, treating it as some sort of lifeline rather than the consolation prize that Ambedkar believed it to be. Well, that's the paradox that my guest today has now mapped in detail. Why the blueprint that Dr Ambedkar actually wanted was abandoned. Why the compromise that he criticised most fiercely is now the one that his followers defend most fiercely. And we'll walk through what that original blueprint contained, why it never got built, and what Ambedkar's diagnosis of India's founding settlement means for how we think about Khalistan today. So to guide us through it, I'm joined today, as ever, by Dr Gurinder Singh Grewal. Dr Grewal, as always, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Good morning, Angus. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So we will talk about Ambedkar. I think in the end we will have discussion why we're talking about it. This is to learn what happened and how to make sure it doesn't happen again. Okay. So Ambedkar is considered the one who made India's constitution, which is not true. But this myth continues to be perpetuated by Congress government, now the Modi government, because this helps them assure a minority, the Dalits, you are given the privileges what Ambedkar wanted. So this is what we want to talk about. We talked last time mythbusters. So this is what we are busting the myth, okay? So March 1947, Ambedkar, he was part of this committee. He presented a document which he called States and Minorities. Okay, he called this is the proposed constitution on his behalf, which was 85 pages long, and after that it doesn't show up anywhere. He doesn't talk about it. That's the myth. Okay, so he called this United States of India. You remember last time we were talking. He was the first one to call United States of India because he studied in US and England also. So next slide, I think we can show his picture. You have that? Yeah, that's the picture, his picture on the book. So we are not making up. Everything we are talking is from his book and the results of that. Next.
And then that's the document itself. And then,
so 1947, can you go next?
Yep, stand by. There we go.
Next. Okay. Draft Constitution, the submerged class, 1947 context, okay? The Constitution Assembly is forming. The dominant political narrative is national independence from British colonial rule. Ambedkar submits a memorandum on behalf of the All India Scheduled Caste Federation, deliberately presenting as a draft constitution article, complete with explanatory notes and electoral statistics. It is not a plea, it is an architect blueprint. So he called this architect blueprint, and let's see what he's saying in this. Next. So illusion of political independence, that's what he's saying. The departure of colonial rulers does not automatically liberate oppressed Indians. permanent social majority. Without strong constitutional safeguards, political independence simply transfers government power to a dominant caste majority, leaving the submerged classes as permanent subjects. So that's what he wanted to prevent, but it looks like nothing changed. Okay, next. The political quality is precarious without economic and social foundation. That's what he shows. Social democracy and economic democracy. Principle of one person, one vote must ultimately evolve into one person, one value democracy rests on the proportion that the individual is an end in themselves, possessing inalienable rights that cannot be surrendered for livelihood. Okay, here is using some of the verbiage from the U.S. Constitution, and that's why he's calling United States of India. Next, oppression of different magnitude. He says according to current status, minorities, political exclusion, occupation oppression, linguistic and religious disadvantage, absolute social and economic oppression of the scheduled castes. Okay, that's what he perceived was the society was, and he rejects the claim that scheduled castes are not a minority. Their condition is demonstrably worse than conventional minorities. Okay, here he's talking. You can say to Gandhi that they are a minority, and Gandhi was including them into the Hindus. They require three interlocking tiers of protection. So this is what he suggested. Rights available to all citizens, protection available to minorities, specific radical safeguards engineered solely for their unique subjugation. He wants special protection for the Dalits or scheduled castes. Okay, next. Engineering the United States of India, he called the states. So here we're referring to, India had 595 some states which were controlled by rulers. So he's saying that qualified states versus unqualified states. He's saying qualified states, the ones who are big enough, has sources and all that, basically they will follow the Constitution of India when they're taken in. The others will be unqualified states. He's talking about inherited princely privileges entirely subordinated to viable administration. Furthermore, the union is declared indissoluble. There is no unilateral right to succeed. So he's referring here to the poor people, Dalit people who are in living those states, that they need protection, and those rulers cannot do anything different than the main Indian government. So that's what he's referring to, qualified versus unqualified states. Okay, next. So redefining freedom beyond government overreach. Okay, freedom from and freedom to. Freedom from, we're talking about his suggestions are. Okay, arbitrary government action, freedom from unreasonable searches, forced labor, retrospective criminal laws, traditional liberal rights restricting state power. Okay, this is what he's seeking freedom from, and freedom to, protection from poverty, eradication of entrenched caste hierarchy, independence from economic reliance, protection from private domination, substantial material liberty requiring state action. So he's asking Constitution to protect them from all these bad things. Did he achieve it? Freedom is incomplete if it merely restricts the state, if the government withdraws from economic life. The resulting liberty principally belongs to landlords, employers, the liberty to exploit. Okay. Here he's saying something more different. We'll cover in the next. He's basically saying the government takes control of resources. So he's talking a little bit of socialism here, which will be evidence in the coming slides. Okay, next. constitutional annihilation of customs. Okay. Here he's talking against the customs. Okay. Customary laws, regulations, social customs, legal interpretation, legal interpretation. Okay. Remind me if I forgot. Maybe I should mention now. Here he's talking constitution annihilation of customs. Okay. He does not want customs of Hindu majoritarian government to control the poor Dalits. But listen, Article 25, when he is debating with the Sikh representatives, he is using customary law of 1830 and includes Sikhs, Buddhists and Jains into Hinduism. So you can see the paradox. He is talking so many things at the same time. He's the most confused personality, hard to understand where he stands. But you see, he's abolishing customary laws, but he's using customary laws against the Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists. So what he's trying to do abolishes every privilege or disability arising from rank, birth, family, religion, or caste. Okay, it's a good thing he's asking for, but it still stays. Denying access to public facilities, schools, wealth, road, transportation based on caste becomes a criminal offense. Okay. Yes, he tried, but I don't think he was able to totally remove it. Number 3, radical shift. Scrutiny is not restricted to formal state legislation. Private, custom, and historical social practice are explicitly subject to principle of constitutional equality. He's saying the private business industry must follow what government is doing so they don't exploit the underprivileged society. Okay, so these 3 things he's proposing. He's saying annihilation of the custom laws, but he's using custom laws against the Sikhs. Okay, next. Criminalizing the legal weapon of social boycott. Land rights are meaningless without immediate remedies. So what he's saying here, all the agriculture things should be controlled by the government, and people surrender that to the government and they participate like a commune and people get benefit of how much they work. So he's talking about what Russia has, a socialized agriculture system, okay? Work, credit, so all this, he says, should be constitutional provisions, equal protection, non-discrimination. So habeas corpus when people have right to say, okay, produce their person where this, mandamus, certi orari, prohibition, quo warranto, okay? These are the legal words he's using for protection. Without going into each one in detail, this is the language used in the courts where right without a remedy is a mere declaration. Supreme Court is granted absolute authority to supervise other courts and issue writs. This right cannot normally be suspended except during rebellion or invasion. But we see in current government, the Supreme Court is also part of the government system. They are like executive branch of Modi government, not a true justice system. Okay. Next. Constitutional state socialism, economic architecture, key industries, basic industries and insurance, state-owned, operated directly or via public corporation. Every adult citizen is required to obtain life insurance, provide a capital for national development. He's saying all the key industries should be operated by the state and everybody treated fairly, given insurance. Non-basic industry left open to private enterprise. All basic industries, including agriculture, should belong to the state. He's basically socialist in thinking. Why constitutional socialism? Okay, this is his justification. Ambedkar decisively rejects the binary of capitalism with democracy versus socialism through dictatorship by locking state socialism into the constitution. He prevents ordinary legislation majorities from reversing economic justice while retaining parliamentary democracy. So this is his wish list. And where India is today, most of those businesses are owned by Abani, Adani. We know what truly happened. Okay. Next, agriculture revolution. Basically, this is a busy slide, but he's requiring all agriculture thing to be state control. Elimination of landlords, exploitative tenancy, landlessness, and caste-based allocation. So he's saying the state takes control of all agriculture and people participate in this. Farmers are leased to group of villages, family to cultivate collectively. So collective farming, that's what he's recommending. Next. Danger of communal executive. Pillar 2, United Kingdom states, okay, political majority changes from election to election based on policy. This is what he says is happening in United Kingdom. But in Indian reality, social majorities are permanently rooted in caste and communal identity. So this is what United States, the government changes, but in India, social majorities are permanent, rooted in caste and communal identity. Ambedkar's warning applied. The British parliamentary cabinet system in India allows permanent social majority to monopolize executive authority, effectively reducing minority to the position of permanent and excluded subjects. Okay. This is what he wanted to eliminate. Did he succeed? We can see nothing has changed. Next. Fixed term communal executive, majority legislature, majority representative, minority representative, prime minister elected by entire legislature. Okay. Cabinet members serve a fixed legislative term and cannot be removed by ordinary no confidence vote. Purpose, an absolute guarantee of direct, proportionate, unremovable minority representation in executive decision making. Okay. I think in next or two slides, they become clear what he's trying to do now. Continuous oversight, the superintendent of minority affairs. So he's asking that there should be superintendent of minority affairs who monitor the executive, administration, public, and have constitutional responsibility, investigate treatment of minorities, identify miscarriage of justice caused by communal prejudice, monitor discrimination by public officials, produce annual report that the union and state legislature are constitutionally required to discuss. Core philosophy, courts alone cannot identify remedies, systemic everyday prejudice, active continuous monitoring with high security of tenure is mandatory. So what he's asking, some kind of authority, which he calls superintendent of minority affairs, who monitors all these things and make sure the government and the central level and the state level is following all those things intended to eliminate the discrimination of the poor. But nothing like that happened. Okay. Next. So pillar 3, he's asking escaping the village separate settlement. Traditionally based on the caste, the villages have high caste, middle caste, low caste segregated. He's asking that to be abolished. Separate settlement, geographically isolated but economically depend on dominant caste landlord. So the village in the villages, the poor are segregated, but they still depend on the high class. So that's what he's trying to eliminate. His reasoning, the traditional village allows dominant caste to control employment, enforce customs, and utilize social boycotts. Breaking this geographic and economic dependence is not escapism. It is the only alternative to perpetual slavery. The goal is communities without the internal distinction of touchable and untouchable. He is suggesting that there should be no such segregation. So good idea, but no result. Next. Now, this is very interesting. In 1932, he signed agreement with Gandhi regarding the Pune Pact. In 1947, he goes before this Constitutional Committee to dismantle the Pune Pact. You know, he was sent as a representative of the minorities by Dalit leaders to represent them in the Roundtable Conference 1, where he argued with Gandhi. Look what happened. So when he came back, he tried to fight for that. He was threatened and he caved in and he signed the Pune Pact. So now he's trying to say in 1947, the Pune Pact should be abolished. Statistical flaw. A candidate strongly supported by scheduled caste voters can easily lose the general election. So he said, you know, even there's a Dalit candidate, a scheduled caste candidate, he will lose unless majority community votes for him. That's what happened. Conversely, a compliant candidate with weak community support can win purely via majority community voters. So this is the fault in the Pune Pact, and he's trying to correct by having reserves representation become nominal. The elected official is politically dependent upon the accountable to the majority party, not the minorities. Okay, these are the defects, and let's go next. What he's suggesting, he is now suggesting separate electorates, the guarantee of true accountability. You know, this is what was there in the communal award, and he supported that the Dalits will have separate electorates, Muslims will have separate electorates. That's what the Jinnah wanted, but the Congress would not agree, and he gave in to Gandhi, and he signed the Pune Pact. Now, in 1947, he's trying to undo the Pune Pact he signed. Mechanism, separate electorates coupled with adult franchise and cumulative voting. Now he's asking in the law to put separate electorates for minorities. Majority voters, majority representatives. So why he's saying non-anti-national. Nationalism depends on broader social forces, not ballot box. Okay. Not creating separation. Extreme caste segregation already exists in housing, marriage, and employment. Voting separately does not create separation. So he's justifying the mechanism of a separate electorate, right to choose. This way, the minority must decide the electoral mechanism because it is a protective shield. Genuine representation requires both presence and absolute independence. So now he's trying to undo the Pune Pact, which he signed under threat. Okay, next. Capturing the permanent administration. Proportionate representation demanded across all union states, municipal public service. So he's asking this separate electorate for the Dalits at every level of the government. Next. Next. So for our audience, look at what he was trying to do. So he goes before the committee with his 85-page document. And after that, he is in the committee, but nobody ever hears anything what happened to him. So this is the constitution he was trying to propose, which dies there. And he still stays in the committee. He does not sign, he does not protest, and he becomes part of them because he does not have the courage to stand before the high caste people. So the Ambedkar paradox, why a radical blueprint was abandoned and why its compromise is fairly defended today. So question is why this blueprint was abandoned. Instead, he and his followers defend what happened. Dr. Ambedkar stands in 1940, fiercely criticized 1932 Pune Pact as a mechanism of complete disfranchisement. This is what he signed, and he was trying to undo that. But look what's happening in 2024. Dalits are still marginalized communities, freely fiercely defend the 1950 Constitution against any threat of alteration. They have been so misguided, they think this Constitution was made by Ambedkar and they want to defend it. They say whatever the benefits they got, they don't want to lose it. So instead of learning what he wanted to do, they have become defendants of this Constitution, which only served the majoritarian Hindutva people. Okay, so this is the end result. Ambedkar viewed the final 1950 Constitution as a deeply compromised document, stripped of its most radical economic and social demands. He's the one in 1953 who has said, it served nobody, he will be the first one to burn it, but he didn't burn it. Look the result. What is happening today? Modern followers celebrate the Pune Pact reservation system as the primary indispensable lifeline for representation. They have been cheated, misguided, and they think they got the benefit. The Dalit person can be only elected who has the endorsement of majority community. So even though there's a physical presence, but the outcome is not for the Dalits. So why do those who follow him most closely fiercely defend the very compromise he warned against? This is the sad situation. The people who have been eliminated as far as the benefits in the Constitution which he wanted, and they're celebrating. They have become the ones who celebrate the reservation system, thinking it benefits them. So this is how poorly guided or they are misguided in the outcome. But what the government is doing, Congress did, now BJP doing, they're putting Ambedkar's statues all over wherever they can. So these people keep believing Ambedkar was their Messiah and he liberated them and they need to celebrate him. But look at the truth. What he did and what he accomplished was a majoritarian Hindu rule because he could not fight it. He won't resign it. He didn't have the courage to do that. Okay. Unbuilt utopian architecture. The states and minorities, what are the rights and how to secure them in Constitution of Free India. Months before independence, Dr. Ambedkar submitted a memorandum to the Constitution Assembly titled States and Minorities. It was ultimate architecture blueprint for a free India. That was his vision. He recognized that political democracy, one man, one vote, was meaningless without economic democracy, one man, one value. He warned that fundamental rights are useless to a starving, landless, socially boycotted citizen. He realized what was happening. To prevent the replacement of British imperialism with Hindu majoritarianism, he proposed a radical different constitutional structure, one that was ultimately rejected. Okay. His proposal was rejected, but there is no document showing what happened inside, and we are totally not aware of any of those things. Okay, next. So diagnostic metrics, what was demanded, what was forged, what exists. Okay, this is interesting. 1947 blueprint in the blue, gold is 1950, and what is reality today? Economy, state socialism, what he wanted. Now we have mixed economy, directive principle, but private property protected as a right. So what is the result? Today we have severe wealth inequality, vast landless population. So he did not accomplish anything what he wanted to. In fact, the opposite is true. Elections. He wanted separate electorates for minority to choose two representatives. What he end up accepting is joint electorate with reserved seats, Pune Pact model. Okay, he was not able to undo. So what is happening? Token representative dependent on majority. Yes, in 530 seats, there are 131 representatives of Dalits, but they're sitting there. They have no power. They vote whenever they're told to raise their hands. they raise their hands. If they don't agree, they lose their seat. Geography, separate settlements, what was there and he was against it. What happening? Village structure remains intact. Those separate settlements, segregation is still the current structure. Continual rural marginalization and spatial segregation. So today, continual rural marginalization still exists. Some cases, if the Dalit boy going for his wedding on a horse, but they go in front of a high-class Hindus, and they say, how dare you go in front of our house? There are movies showing that, and they shoot him. So that's what is current. He did not succeed in doing any of them because he did not fight. Power, shared executive, non-parliamentary minority cabinet, parliament cabinet, PM chooses all ministers. So that he was not able to accomplish. So what is happening? Total majoritarian control over the executive. The PM has a total control. There is not a single Muslim, even though they are 20-some percent or less of the population. So the ministers are all what Prime Minister want. Social boycott explicitly outlawed as a severe criminal offense. Untouchably abolish Article 70, but boycott not constitutionally defined. So, yes, they have written, but it's not effective. Systemic exclusion and unofficial social boycott still persist. So, his proposals, what he wrote with the explanation in 85 pages, nothing was accepted, and we don't know why, and what did he do to lobby that. Next. Anatomy of trap. Pune Pact is fraud with mischief. It is a mechanism of complete disfranchisement, Dr. Ambedkar. Yes, he realized too late. When he signed under threat, he probably knew it, but he could not muster courage to fight this high caste society. Next. Mechanism of disfranchisement, 1946 electoral data. So there were two elections, one in Bombay area, one in Madras, where they realized that minority community can only have candidate who can win endorsed by majority. So the override finally is with the majority community. So that reservation had no meaning. Next. Illusion of British Parliament model. Political majority. In Britain, there's a political majority runs the country. But when they change, yes, a party changes, government changes, but society doesn't change. But in India, communal majority, the Indian reality based on fixed identities, religion, caste determined by birth, a communal majority is rigid, permanent, and impenetrable. Without structural safeguards, importing the British system simply guaranteed permanent rule by communal majority. So this is what the reality today. The majoritarian Hindu government following the ideology of RSS, BJP, and everybody else doesn't really matter. Now, they are very actively trying to pass that delimitation bill to increase the number of parliament members so that they don't need to worry about the minorities or the southern states, the Punjab or eastern states. The Hindutva states will control all that. So this architecture engineering to preserve their rule is still playing a role, and this bill will be coming in next few months. So, next. Realization of a warning modern majoritarian. Ambedkar's 1947 warning has materialized. The consolidation of majoritarian rule in contemporary India has transformed the communal majority into a permanent governing class. This is what he was trying to prevent, but the result is the opposite. By rejecting Ambedkar demands For structure power sharing, non-parliament executive and separate electoral, the current system allows a unified communal majority to capture the legislature, the executive, and the administration. So these community had the total control in the government and in the parliament. So the result is not a true democracy of shifting coalitions, but a system where minorities are structurally locked out of determining the destiny of the state. So unlike British, this is a permanent majority control. Even if the government change, party changes, the majoritarian population still controls. Okay. Each source of domination required a constitutional remedy. Source of domination, Ambedkar proposed remedy. I'll go quickly. This is summary of what we have talked. Source of domination, arbitrary government. He tried constitutional limitation, that didn't succeed. Discrimination laws and custom, it did not happen. Biased administration, tribunal oversight, representing public service, did not happen. Majority control of government, he wanted power sharing, that did not happen. Political exclusion, proportional representation, separate electoral, that did not happen. Social boycott, criminal prohibition, that still is the current status. Education backwardness, guaranteed public funding, that is to some extent there is, but majority of these people live in villages and they don't have access to all that. Only small group of people who become class by themselves has benefited. Landlessness, state ownership, he wanted a socialist system like communist country, that did not happen. Private economic power, he wanted to abolish that, that's still the truth. Adani Ambani's control India. Village caste dependence, separate settlements. Yeah, village still has the caste system and the separate settlement. Legislative repeal of safeguards, it is not the current system. Entrenched constitutional protection, it did not happen. So everything in that document he brought up did not happen, and there's no way to find what he did and why did he lose. We can discuss that in a couple of minutes. So ecosystem of vulnerability, why minorities remain exposed. Political marginalization, strict or separate electorates, minority lacks the autonomous political power to combat social and economic exclusion. They are stuck with under 31 seats, which cannot give them protection, okay? Today's reality validates why Ambedkar's original demands were not a utopian, but precise diagnostic antidote. Dalits, Muslim, Christian, and Sikhs today face systemic economic exclusion and boycott because the structural safeguards to prevent them were never built. So this is true. So nothing was in the Constitution built in to protect all those abuses. Spatial economic dependence, absence of separate settlement, leave minority trapped in hostile economic environment as landless, labor or dependent businesses. Okay. Weaponized social boycott. Economic dependence enable the majority to use social boycott to enforce compliance and silent dissent. Okay. Because they have economic power, they can subdue the poor people, Dalits, with their power, and they have protection of the state, police, the government, everything helps them. Pragmatic life, why defend a compromise? Okay. Pune Pact is fraught with mischief. Modern followers are not ignorant of Ambedkar's compromise. They are navigating a hostile reality. Why are they defending Ambedkar's, saying Ambedkar protected them? He didn't. So the only ladder without radical wealth redistribution, state socialism, reservation in education, and government jobs became the sole viable mechanism for Dalit social mobility and middle class. They understand that all those things did not happen, but they are given the idea that Ambedkar protected them. This is the majority communities controlled conversation. So they are celebrating the compromise, not because it is perfect, because it is the only lifeline they were allowed to keep. So they are saying, okay, you be happy with what you have, otherwise you can lose that too. So that is the truth. They are told to be happy with what you have, or you may lose that too. Or forged in compromise, deployed as armor. 1950 Constitution, not a utopian blueprint. It is a document forged in intense compromise, leaving the economic structure integrity largely intact. So to make a summary, I think this is a tyranny of majoritarianism, and the colonial constitution still rules. The only thing is, it is not the British, it is the homegrown colonialism. The blueprint and the shield. So Ambedkar's paradox is not a contradiction, it is a master class in political survival. So what this blueprint to know what will tomorrow. We defend the shield to survive today. So they have been cheated. The poor people, Dalits, who were supposed to be protected by Ambedkar's suggestion, they are not protected. Nobody knows what happened to his document he presented. So they are told, celebrate what you have. This is good enough for survival. Think of tomorrow. We'll talk tomorrow. So this is where it ended. So I think we can talk more if you have any question. But what I am not against Ambedkar. I don't have any personal prejudice against him. I think he was very intelligent, highly educated, but had no spine. He did not have the courage of conviction to fight the majoritarians. Once he was with them, they told him, you should be happy that you are one of us sitting here. And that's what he accepted. I think that end result is the situation is the same, which was during colonial government, and the new colonial government continues to exploit the poor people, religious minorities, and all that. So we have a colonial government. We don't have United States of India, what he was proposing.
I think what's very interesting, Dr. Grail, is I didn't realise that Dr. Ambedkar was such a socialist. And it does actually draw in another sort of whole dynamic into that period of time that actually we haven't even touched on, is the involvement of the Soviet Union. Because we do know, for example, that Gandhi had a close relationship with Moscow, and that also had its own influence, and probably quite a large influence on Indian politics, certainly around the time the British withdrew. So I find it quite ironic that Dr. Ambedkar was the socialist, following that sort of almost Soviet Union model, at least not to quite an extreme extent, but he was following that certainly quite a strong socialist model. And you would expect then that India, with the influence from Moscow, would actually probably have moved towards a more socialist model. But instead it didn't. It moved into this majoritarian, well, a quasi-democratic model, let's call it. But I think certainly as an objective observer to this, it's very clear what happened, that it touches on what we discussed last week, which is it's he who carries the biggest stick wins. And I think that is exactly clearly what happened here, is that the upper caste, those who already were effectively in control and dictating this whole process, the upper caste just dictated this is what's going to happen. There was a few tick boxes that they agreed to. Yeah, we'll give the Dalits their reserve status and a minority say, a minority voice, which effectively, as we've discussed, was a pretty pointless compromise on behalf of the Dalits. But ultimately, it was the Brahmanical elite who had the biggest stick in 1947, and they designed the whole process to ensure that they maintained that control going forward. And so my real question, as well as your thoughts on that, is, bearing all this in mind, what are your thoughts going forward when we look at and we discuss Khalistan and the governance model and the lessons that can be learnt from what happened in 1947?
So my conclusion is this. I think there's a lesson to be learned from every event, part of the history that we study. The Ambedkar was sent as a representative to Roundtable Conference. When he comes back, he signs the Pune Pact. He called no meeting. He didn't discuss with any other leaders. And he signed under threat that he was going to suffer, his community was going to suffer, there are going to be killing of minorities. He gave in. I think the right approach should have been, he should have called a meeting of the people he represented and let them give the input whether they want this or not. This did not happen. He did not follow a democratic method. So then next step. 1947, he proposes these changes on behalf of the Dalit community, but this is just his proposal, which are not bad, okay? But he doesn't discuss with anybody. He does not come back to the community and say, look, this is what I did, but I am not able to do what is the next step. So he is not democratic in his behavior, even though he studied in democratic countries. I think this is a problem that we need to learn. This is what happened in Punjab. After Operation Blue Star, Rajiv Gandhi and Longowal, Sant Longowal, signed an agreement. Longowal was not part of Punjab government. He didn't represent the whole Punjab. He somehow felt like he had the authority to sign this agreement. It was a useless document, accomplished nothing, and he got killed in return too. So I think what I'm trying to say, in these negotiations, you need a democratic character. People who go to negotiate should be chosen democratically or accepted by the people. Okay, you are going to be on our behalf. And whether they succeed or not, they need to come back with whatever they discuss, that they are winning or not, and let the whole community decide. Just like, look, what happened in Britain. Okay, they wanted to get out of England. Government didn't want to, but people wanted to. They have a referendum. And the people won, the government accepted, and they got out of European Union. So I think having democratic character, people's participation is very important. I think this is where we Sikhs who want Khalistan need to learn. We do not want individual leader. People keep saying, oh, you don't have any leader. We don't want one leader because he can betray you. Okay, they have betrayed us before. We have a Khalsa Panth where there is a Sarvat Khalsa. There is a representative model given by the Gurus. We should not rely on one person who can be threatened, who may give in, who may be bought, whatever the reason. And whatever the discussion is going on, it should be public. And people should have their say, okay, we disagree, we agree, we want modification. That didn't happen. That's why I think we're discussing Ambedkar as a proposal. Even though as he thought the best, he brought it, but there's no evidence anybody agree, disagree, it was discussed. But they, Ambedkarites, they call themselves Ambedkarites, keep celebrating, he did good for them. Okay, if that's what you are happy with, you will be living under the majoritarian rule for centuries. It is not acceptable to the Sikhs that we have one person who can go make a deal. I think the democratic character of representative, democratic participation of the people in the decision making is what is necessary. And I think the Sikhs, including me, we need to learn from this experience. That's why we're talking about. We have nothing against Ambedkar. We're discussing events in history, how those events resulted in a bad outcome. We don't want to repeat bad outcomes. We had enough of that. So this is my purpose of bringing it today. The democratic representation, democratic decision making is the best process to avoid all these mistakes.
Indeed. And if I may just ask one very final, very quick question about the Constitution of Khalistan. I understand that a constitution was drawn up after the 1986 Sarbat Khalsa, at that time. So that, as far as I can find, that is the only written constitution or proposed constitution for Khalistan. Are you aware of any other constitutions, or what do you think? Is there anything happening behind the scenes with the Khalistan movement that you're aware of, for example, to consider a constitution for Khalistan?
So that's a good question. The constitution of Khalistan can be only based on Sikh principles. I think we talked before how similar is the Sikh principles and US Constitution. A constitution cannot be made by people who are not free. The US Constitution was implemented many years after US became free. Only free people can think, deliberate, and make decisions. Until the Sikhs are free, constitution concepts discussion can take place, but no constitution can be accepted unless it's free and the free people propose, deliberate, discuss, and make decisions. I think anybody who trying to do this before is either ignorant or mischievous or whatever you can call it. So constitution cannot be anything other than the Sikh principle. There can be no caste. All people have to be equal. And all those things are very, very important. Otherwise, we don't gain anything.
Indeed. And it's worth throwing in one of my favourite quotes from Winston Churchill. I think he actually said back in the 1940s something like, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those others that have been tried. So I think that probably sums it up quite perfectly. But there, indeed, we must leave it. But of course, we'll be talking again with Dr. Growell soon to continue.
You also remember you said one time, and I think we talked, the democracy is when government fears the people. When people fear the government, it's not a democracy. So I think democracy is when government fears the people. So people participation is very important. If people want to sit home, not participate, it's their own fault.
Indifference is the biggest enemy, as we always say.
Thank you, Angus. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I hope people will learn something. I am sorry, went a little bit over time. We're trying to keep the time. Last time, I think, was long. Some people complain.
But that's okay. Indeed, not a problem, Dr. Growell. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, as always. And thank you for watching the Satluj TV podcast. We will see you next time.